are. I'm Tom Osman, and this is Whatever Comes Next, the podcast where I explore the world of underground and independent music making. And on today's episode, I am joined by Greg Kubacki, principal songwriter and guitarist for metal group Carbomb. And I'm not really sure exactly how to further describe what Carbomb are because they are pretty unusual, pretty unique. In this interview, I tend to refer to them as experimental metal, but I suppose if we think about the origins of the band, half the band came from a sort of a hardcore background. The other half came from a more progressive metal background, and together they have, their own very unique sound. In some ways, kind of comparable to Dillinger Escape Plan, with some kind of like Mike Patton elements that we discuss in this interview. Also, as well, I hope that I'm pronouncing Greg's last name correctly. I do have a long history in this podcast and elsewhere of mispronouncing people's names and other things, but that's how I heard his name said in another podcast. So if I'm wrong, I blame that guy. Anyway, why am I talking to Greg? I'm talking to Greg because Carbomb are just about to release a new EP, Tiles, Whispers, Dreams, which is coming out this Friday. And you can get the EP on 10-inch vinyl on 3 different colored editions, I think. You can get it on CD. There was some discussion, Greg was saying, about possibly having a cassette version as well. There are various t-shirts which are available to coincide with the release. You can go to the band's website, which is carbombcult.com, for music videos, for links to a European and a North American store. There's tour dates coming up. The band's going to be playing, I think the first date coming up is the Brutal Assault Festival in the Czech Republic. It's going to be on the 7th of August, and they have a couple of weeks worth of dates coming after that going through Europe. They're going to be in Germany, they're going to be in the UK, and a bunch of other places too. And then they're going to be in Australia. But that's going to be a little bit later on in September. So we are here to discuss the forthcoming release and what else? History of the band, some of Greg's other projects, and some of the various different kind of music world, music business topics that I like to get into, and Long Island as well, which is where Greg is based, and that is where the discussion starts. And that is where my introduction is going to end. You can follow me at Tom Osman Sounds. You can go to my website, tomosmansounds.com, to check out what I'm doing with my music. Oh, yes, and one last thing, I'm going to play a track from Tiles, Whispers, Dreams at the end of the episode, a short clip coming up in a moment. And so, without further ado, Greg of Carbomb, take it away.
Hey, Tom, how are you?
I'm very good. How are you doing?
I'm doing good, man. It's a nice summer day here in Long Island, so not too bad.
Well, you've answered the incidental question I was going to have, which was whether you still live in Long Island.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I mean, me and Johnny are the only two that do. Elliot still lives on the island, but he's in Queens now, which is considered like New York City. And then Mike is all the way in Trenton, New Jersey.
It's funny. I was talking to someone about Long Island the other day, and I'm kind of fascinated by it that, that it is an island. And so it's like, if you want to get off into the mainland, do you have to take the ferry? Is that right?
No, so I mean, if you go through the city, there's a bunch of bridges. I think there's like 5 or 6 that go to either Connecticut or they go to upstate, and then you can take a ferry upstate. I'm not upstate to Connecticut, either through Port Jefferson or somewhere out east.
Oh, okay. So it's not as isolated. I was perhaps creating this fantastical image of.
Not really. And there's 3 airports, so if you want to get out of here, you can totally get out of here.
You've got 3 airports on Long Island.
Yeah. There's MacArthur. Oh, there's a bunch more than that. There's MacArthur Airport, and then there's obviously JFK and LaGuardia, and then there's some other small ones. I think one in Lindenhurst and one somewhere else.
Do you know what? It's one of these funny things. Like, even though I'm originally from Australia, I've lived most of my life in Europe, and it's like the scale is just completely different.
Totally. Absolutely. Like when we go on tour in Europe, it's so amazing to play a show in Paris and then wake up and you're in Barcelona and you're like, what this is so weird how everybody speaks a different language and the culture's different, but you can drive, 20 hours in America and hit the same Kmart set up
Yeah.
on Walmart or whatever.
Yeah, for sure. Exactly.
Yeah.
So, anyhow, I wanted to ask you another incidental question.
Sure.
How is it that Metal Archives doesn't have an entry for Car Bomb?
Do they not?
They don't. They don't have
I,
Car Bomb. You know what they also don't have? They don't have Dillinger Escape Plan, but they do have Meshuggah.
maybe they
So,
don't like the whole mathcore thing or odd time thing or something like that. They don't consider that metal.
yeah, well, I
Maybe.
guess that's it. Through whatever standards they have, they've apparently decided that your type of metal that you do with Car Bomb is not the kind of metal they can cope with.
Fair enough. I mean, we really don't consider ourselves like a metal band anyway. Like we try
Yeah.
not to. I mean, Elliot and Johnny are more on the old school metal tip. Obviously, John, Mike and I grew up on metal too, but we have so many other different influences. So we don't like to limit ourselves to that genre anyway. So if we get kind of denied by it, what are we gonna do?
Yeah, because you started out, or at least before Car Bomb, you were in Neck, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And that
With
was,
Mike. Yeah.
I mean, I don't exactly want to say that's hardcore because I guess that was still kind of metal, but you had that hardcore aspect to it.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, we grew up when we were doing it back in the '90s. That's the scene we were like trying to get into while we were doing it. Like we loved like bands like Vision of Disorder, like they were just so heavy and brutal, and the tempo changes were amazing. So that DNA was in Neck as well, and now it's part of Car Bomb as well.
Yeah.
And it's so cool to see like hardcore kind of come back in that sense and have everything off the grid again, and have things slow down for heavy parts, and that's really cool.
Yeah. No, I'm all for blending things and experimentation and just kind of general unexpected twists and turns.
Sure, sure.
And so I wanted to ask you more about some of the history, but before we get into that, we should talk about Tiles, Whispers, Dreams, your forthcoming EP. So this is the first material that you've had since 2019, is that right?
Yeah, yeah, and we had the same reaction that you had, which is like, holy shit, it's been almost 6 years. Like, what the fuck?
And in fact, my introduction to Car Bomb, I think, was basically exactly when Mordial came out, and I
Hmm.
then went out and bought it straight away. So it was very fortunate timing. But I was thinking, like going through your releases, you tended to have 3 or 4 or 5 years between releases. Obviously, we've just gone through the pandemic, but I'm
Hmm.
wondering how much did that put a wrench in the band versus kind of what you tend to have as your time between releases anyway.
I don't think the pandemic really had anything to do with that. I think there was a couple of factors. I mean, I was doing a lot of other projects on the side. So I was doing Satekra, which is like a electronic music project. And then Ben Frost, he's a soundtrack and a sound designer and an experimental electronic musician. He hit me up and we started working together for a while, and I was doing shows with him. So, and we also, thirdly, we just wanted to make this material as best as we possibly could. And we thought we rushed Morty a little bit, some of the songs. So we really wanted to make sure that we loved every inch of the audio that was we were going to release. So we had this whole not laissez-faire, like, okay, we're just going to come out when it comes out, but we really wanted to like put the effort into it and not put a deadline to it because we wanted to be the best we could make it.
Yeah. I watched this interview with you where you were talking about how it's difficult to know when a track is finished and is a track ever really finished.
Sure. Yeah. It
So,
never is.
yeah.
Never.
And I'm thinking, with your music, it does have so many, from the outside, it's so sort of twisting and morphing. I can sort of see how, particularly with what you do, it would be quite difficult to go, right, this is where this is going to go. Because it sort of feels like it's constantly sort of evolving and changing. And, it's kind of like limitless where you could go with it.
Sure. We always try to that was sort of the challenge with this material is like we wanted the songs to go somewhere and we didn't want to just have it go in meandering directions, which I thought some of our earlier material, like we would just throw in maybe 4 or 5 extra parts because we were like, why not? But now we're trying to limit the songs to shorter compositions and maybe not Tiles, Whispered Dreams, but the other songs, they have more of a sort of a finite sort of pieces that we kind of shuffle around here and there.
Yeah. Yeah, I was thinking like in Paroxysm, I love you've got like this little groove that comes in about 1 minute and it just sort of, it's there for just a little bit. And I was thinking about, I think it was
Yeah.
in, I forget what the documentary was called. It's like the metal evolution thing when they end up having Pantera and Phil Anselmo was talking about the money riff, and he's just like, well, we decided that basically, why not just have the money riff all the time? And I love Pantera, but I feel like Car Bomb is sort of the opposite end of the spectrum of that. It's like, we're going to give you a little money riff in there, and you're
Right.
going to enjoy it, but you're also going to enjoy the other crazy stuff that's going on as well, because there's a lot more to it than just that.
Sure. Sure. I like that. The money riff thing. That's a good thing. We actually been talking about maybe making a record of all just money riffs, I guess we can call it, but I don't think that's ever going to happen. But maybe we'll see.
Yeah, and like thinking about your sound in general, when I mention to people Car Bomb and they don't know them, I tend to sort of say as a just like a quick like reference point, like, oh, well, think of Dillinger Escape Plan, but more mental. But actually, I was thinking maybe a better sort of entry description of Car Bomb for people that don't know the music is more like the love child of Dillinger Escape Plan and Faith No More. Does that
Hmm.
seem reasonable?
Yeah, I think there's definitely an influence of Mike Patton-ish type stuff. I would think maybe more Phantomus. I think because Phantomus really seems like a limitless band, even like with that last record where it was doing this whole anime inspiration thing. Like they had like limitless creativity with even with like sound design and all this other stuff, which we kind of get into sometimes. But yeah, that spirit of hey, let's try something different and go from there. I would say the Faith No More stuff is more the next stuff. Like that's we were hugely influenced by that back in the day.
Yeah, I guess it's partly that you've got those elements where you got like the melodic vocals, and it's almost like there's an element of, Faith No More or um, something like Deftones, even though I wouldn't
Oh yeah,
particularly say you sound like Deftones, but there's, that kind of like that melodic
yeah,
element to the metal, which
absolutely.
which kind of stops you from being quite so just sort of down the thunderous, crazy math metal path.
Yeah, I mean, Deftones is a band that we're all huge fans of, like every single person in the band. And yeah, that's usually the linchpin. It's like, hey, where's the Deftones part? Like, where's the part where he gets to play a power chord for like 30 seconds? And yeah, I mean, Mike's such a great singer that, and he's a great screamer too, but we always try to get him to do other things other than screaming all the time, which that's the kind of stuff we like. Like you said, like you like stuff that's kind of, that changes a lot and has different textures. And that's something we're into as well.
Yeah. Going back to my introduction to your music, so I first heard your music on a reaction video by a guy called Garrett Miller, who's a jazz drummer. And he does reaction videos where he watches metal performances and then, talks about the drumming. And so there was this drum cam video of Elliot Hoffman, and I think it's from 2014 where you're on your tour with Meshuggah.
Okay.
And I think so there's a set of a few songs, and I think it's in Lower the Blade where he's watching this, and there's like about 30, 40 seconds into the song where he's like, are they like, it's like they're warping time. What are they doing here? And he's like, this is like some kind of metal swing thing. And I think that was where I first became really fascinated because I play music and I've played music for a while and I've been a music fan forever, but I'm very much a novice when it comes to like the technicalities of drumming. So when it
Mhm.
comes to things like Dillinger Escape Plan or Meshuggah or Candiria, for example, like I love Ken Schalk as a drummer.
Oh yeah. Yep.
There's stuff going on there that flummoxes me and I find amazing, but then you've also got your own thing from my point of view in terms of the rhythms that you're playing with. And I'm just like completely perplexed by what you're doing. So maybe I know obviously you're not the drummer, but you're writing riffs for this band. So I guess you're in that zone of what it is that you're doing rhythmically. Can you kind of reveal behind the curtain some of the things that you tend to do in Car Bomb? Like, how do you do this weird stuff that from the outside seems so completely impenetrable? Like, it's even
Okay.
beyond, kind of going like, where's the one? It's like, where's the one? And also, what the hell has happened to the time signature?
Sure. 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 I mean, we always try to change it up. I mean, one of the things I like to do when I write music is I like to keep some sort of theme going, like some sort of rhythmic, like I don't know, just a pattern that's or a handful of them that are always within certain parts of the song. And then you kind of move them around. So you can do them over different, divisions. You can slow them down, speed them up. You can take a specific section and just like slur some of the notes or, change the division of just one specific part. And then just keep jumbling up until like you get this path where it seems to make sense or not sense. I mean, there is logic to what we do, and there's definitely some sort of like, I mean, when I think of the music when I write it, there's definitely it's starting in a place and ending in a place. It's not just like moving around aimlessly, but it's hard to figure out what that is. And I think I don't know. I mean, that's one of our signature things is just we hear it in a certain way, but other people hear it in a different way. And I think that's what makes us really unique.
So, like, in terms of how you write riffs, would you tend to write like a more, kind of conventional riff and then you go, right, how can I play around with it? Or are you sort of playing around with it as you're writing it?
Depends. So sometimes I'll have a rhythmic idea and I'll just map it out on a drum machine and just play a simple Meshuggah, like one note pattern to it. And then from there, you just, you copy and paste the loop and you add a thing, or you try a different division or a different, a different cycle over things, or halftime, or a different tempo, or a different key. You just keep juggling things around. And before you know it, you have this 15 minutes of music where it's just you have an idea and then you're iterating, you know, everything, one step or another. And from there, you get a sense of, okay, I have this, 10 or 15 minutes of music. Is there anything that kind of pops out and sounds good? And then, or even sometimes you'll hear a couple of those demos and you'll hear a couple of sequences that make sense. And they kind of draw this line where, okay, it gets heavier here, or it gets faster here, or it has this weird, hallucinatory type of moment here. And I just have to, like, as you're making these demos, just keep an eye open for these moments. And then hopefully that's like, 30 seconds or a minute of a song. And then you just kind of string them together.
And how much from when you're creating riffs, how much do the final tracks end up being a collaboration where someone else brings in a part and now you're putting together the different parts?
Usually it's just me writing now. We used to do that in the past for Centralia and W Click W. We would totally, be in a room together and write riffs and record things and mesh them all together. But now that, we're older, we have more responsibility, all this stuff. So now it's mostly just me writing. Elliot writes riffs from time to time, and he wrote the chorus for Paroxysm, which is a play on the clave riff, which is like, I think, a Cuban or a Latin American thing. So he snuck in a thing there. And but yeah, usually it's just me writing this stuff.
Yeah, it's funny. You just reminded me, I was interviewing Dave Lombardo a while ago when he did his solo record, and he was mentioning how the drum break in Angel of Death is actually taken from Cuban rhythms.
Oh, no way. That's wild. Oh, I guess the tom part, right? Yeah,
Yeah.
that makes sense. I mean, everybody's influenced by Cuban because like Latin beats just move your body whether you want to or not. Even like reggaeton, like you hear reggaeton and you're like, oh, I hate this song, but your body's kind of like,
You can't resist it.
like you can't help it.
So we touched on Neck before, and the other band that had members of later to be Carbon was Spooge. Am I saying that correctly?
That's correct. Yep.
So can you tell me a little bit of the story of what was going on for you at that point and how Spooge and Neck came together and became Carbon?
Sure. We shared a jam space underneath this deli or a butcher in Valley Stream, or I think Rockville Center, maybe. It's one of those two cities, I forget. And yeah, we just heard them play and we were like, what the fuck? We heard Elliot, do his crazy jazz shit, and Johnny fucking play all this crazy stuff on the high strings and the bass. And me and Mike would just be like, man, these guys are great. Like, we need to like steal them one day. And then both those bands dismembered, and Johnny gave me a call out of the blue and was like, hey, do you want to play guitar? I got this project, which he had Mike Fortin as the guitar player at the time, who does Fortin amplifications. He left and asked me to join, and it wasn't Elliot back then. It was this other drummer, Dave Penna, who was a fantastic drummer. He left because he wasn't playing music anymore, and then Elliot joined, and then about a year or so later, we got Mike.
And so I'm just sort of curious about how everything fits together, because I saw that there's a Neck album from 2005 that Elliot actually mastered. But were you still in Neck at that point?
No, is that what's the name of that record?
It does actually have bomb in the title, I think.
Yeah. I think it's like Cancer.
Swarm, smart bomb in the Swarm.
There you go. So no, I was not playing guitar at the time. Mike was playing guitar at the time. Yeah, he wrote all of that record, played with our old drummer Larry, and I'm not sure who played bass there, but yeah, Elliot mastered it.
So I think so you formed Carbomb in 2000, and then there were a few years before you put out your first release. So what was the kind of process of evolution and sort of fitting together your sound over that period?
I guess it was just that finding the sound. I mean, obviously there's personnel changes, and we were really green too. We didn't know, we weren't really friends with other bands that were doing it on the level we wanted to do it. We just kept writing and trying to practice and refine things and finding gear that we liked. And I really got into effects like in the mid 2000s, so that's when I started messing around with that stuff. And then we recorded the record ourselves, which took a long time too. So we did that. Me and Johnny had a house together in Lindenhurst. We were roommates, and we had my recording studio was on the second floor, and all of the gear was in the basement. So we would like run all these cables up, 2 floors to get everything into the mixer on the top. And yeah, so that took we didn't know what to do. There wasn't YouTube, so we were just doing everything from scratch and experimenting and stuff. So that's why maybe it took some time.
And how much were you playing live during that time? Because I'm sort of curious to know, in terms of building up a fan base, how much was that through live shows versus releases?
Not a lot. From what I recall, we would do maybe some local shows here and there. I mean, we played a lot in Neck. So Neck, we did way more shows. We would play like, in the tri-state area. I would go to school in Philly and then, take the train up to the city in Long Island, and then we would go to Connecticut or Jersey or whatever from there. But I'm trying to remember. We would do some local shows here and there, but then after that, we started doing tours like shortly after. So maybe it was like 2 years. Or we got signed to Relapse relatively quickly because I guess the material was something they were looking in, they thought was interesting. And then we would start touring right after that. So we really didn't do a lot of local shows before we started doing that.
So would you say that's kind of like a clear big break for you? You signed to Relapse, you got the tours, and then
Yeah.
sort of the momentum was all there from that point on.
Absolutely. Like we met Joe from Gojira through Pat Egan, who was our A&R for Relapse, and Gordon Conrad, the label manager at the time. He's a great guy that hooked us up with a lot of stuff, and just playing with other bands like High on Fire and bands like that on Relapse, and just from there, it just I don't know, started get the word got out, and we started playing with other bigger bands. Like the Meshuggah tour was really the big one where we're like, whoa, like this is cool. Something's really starting to happen here.
And playing with various other bands and playing in front of other people's fans, do you still find that people are perplexed by your music?
Always. I always tell the story of you ever see the movie Garden State?
Yes.
You know what that is? Okay. Do you
Yes.
know when I think it's Zach's friend like shoots that arrow in the air? Remember, he's shooting he's rich, so he's like bored out of his mind, and he shoots his bow and arrow in the air and lets it go, and they're all just like trying to figure out where it's going to land. So they're like moving around and just kind of like they have no idea. That's people who are trying to figure out where the one is when we play, which is always so. I mean, it's weird because I think more so now people know the material and they find the grooves, and you can there's always someone in the crowd who's like they're like air drumming or they're headbanging in the time that we hear it in. So that's always exciting. But yeah, if we're playing in front of a new audience, that's it's usually deer in the headlights. But as long as the room isn't empty, we're like, all right, things are going pretty well.
Yeah. I mean, do you tend to find that like, and maybe you can't really generalize, but are people generally kind of what's the word? Like they might not understand it, but they're intrigued.
Sure. I mean, I guess it's like confirmation bias because we only talk to people that come up to us and be like, hey, I loved your stuff. So maybe there's a lot of people that are like, I don't like that shit. Fuck that. But no, I mean, I'm drawn to that type of stuff. Like I like watching a movie and not knowing exactly what's going on. Or every time Meshuggah puts a record out and I'm like, how do they pull that off? Why does that sound really interesting, but I can't know exactly where it is? Like that's where my ear's drawn to. So I hope, I know that that's sort of like want for that type of music's out there. So yeah.
And I guess if you're playing with people like Meshuggah, and I know you're going to be touring soon and you're going to play some shows with Imperial Triumphant, you would expect that people who like Imperial Triumphant would have quite an open mind for unusual experimental metal.
Absolutely. Absolutely. But I mean, we try not to do the full, not that they do, but it's like, again, like going full experimental to us seems like a little, so like we want to still, I mean, especially with what I'm trying to write, I still want to keep it so there's something someone can hold on to, even if it's something as simple as like, okay, this this part is definitely changing from this part to that part. Maybe the pulse, the speed or the pulse is changing as opposed to like this free form experimental, like, John Zorn's Cobra, where we're, putting on headbands and soloing and doing weird stuff like that.
Yeah, it's funny. Like I feel in so many cases, genre tags are ultimately unsatisfying. So
Mm,
it's like, yeah, whenever I talk about any kind of music as being experimental, I always think like, what does experimental really imply? But then if
right.
we're not going to call car bomb experimental metal, what's a better term?
I have no idea. I think that's like our biggest problem is being like, what do you sound like? I'm like, I don't know. I mean, I always think of just the bands that were influenced by, and that's enough. But deathcore, like progressive deathcore, mathcore. I don't know, is metalcore in there? I don't know. I mean, I always think shoegaze too, but we never get that label because that's a huge influence. Like, obviously Deftones, but My Bloody Valentine, like that's a huge band that, all the bendy guitar stuff, that's all Kevin Shields' influence. So, but we never get that label at all. It's just something that people go, I don't know what the fuck that is.
Do you know what? I have never thought of that, but as soon as you say that, it makes perfect sense.
Only one other person has said it. One of our sound guys, Joel, was like, "Hey, you My Bloody Valentine fan?" I'm like, "You're the first person that ever fucking said that shit, bro."
So there's a couple of kind of practical questions that I'd like to ask you because I'm sort of curious when I interview people to get their insights about sort of practicalities of making music.
Sure.
Independent, even though you've played on Relapse Records, kind of like playing underground music to a certain degree, not necessarily playing the kind of music that's going to easily get mass exposure.
Mhm.
I'm wondering, thinking about particularly those early years of Car Bomb and maybe in Neck as well, what were you doing to kind of support yourself? Because I would have to imagine that either you had various different projects or you were having to do things that were outside of the music world altogether.
Of course. Yeah. So we all still do that. So this isn't our full time job. We're all, mostly in the tech profession. So software development, cybersecurity, project management, home theater installation, like stuff like that. I mean, obviously it shows in the music too. We're all pretty, technically like inclined. So that's how we fund this like little passion project that we have.
And so, well, you've probably already answered that question that I'm going to ask next, but is it possible to make a living from making like experimental heavy music in this day
I
and
don't know.
age?
I don't know. I mean, I've been thinking about that a lot, and I think I'm going to try to do more of my own stuff and see if I can make a living off of it somehow. And I think it's more of you could do it, but I think it's a lot of you have to do the social media appeal to the algorithm thing where you're posting something once a week or whatever, or writing a song every month. I mean, I think that's the only way you can really get enough eyeballs or earballs on your stuff to be able to you know, make some sort of living by, because the main revenue is only like merch, Spotify streams, which isn't a lot, and, playing shows, which, obviously is very expensive. So, I mean, Dillinger's done it, Meshuggah does it. And, we keep steadily getting bigger and bigger, I guess, if you look at the numbers. So I'm not going to count it out 100%. So we'll see.
And having brought up merch, that's also another thing that I like to ask people about. So, how important is the merch table?
Oh, super important. But even just from personally, like I'm a designer. So I design all the merch, like 99% of the merch. So to me, like that's part of the record is like the designs of everything. And the music videos, all the different logos and like that sort of to me, like writing the music and playing, it's like 50 or 60% of it, whereas the other visual parts, the 40% of it.
Oh, that's cool. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so, in terms of like, merch that you bring to shows, is it t-shirts that are ultimately the thing that are going to make you,
Of course.
the biggest profit?
Black t-shirts with bleeding skulls. And no, I'm just kidding. Yeah, for pretty much. Yeah. Just, that's like the biggest thing that moves that people buy. I mean, we've tried a bunch of other items, but usually it's just the shirts that sell the most.
Yeah. And, talking about the fact that you are involved in various different aspects of the band, you co-produced Meta,
Mhm.
I think. Was that your first sort of move into production? And is that something that you've pursued after that?
I think so. Yeah. I mean, the first two we've all produced as a band, and I think Meta was the one where I wrote most of the music and recorded a lot of it, whereas I sort of took the helm of this is my domain. Like other people in the band have other domains. Like Johnny's the logistics guy and all that stuff. But yeah, I mean, and then once I started working with Ben Frost and experimenting with electronic music, now I'm curious to see what other type of production stuff I can do. And I have a couple other little projects that I'm working on that I'll be recording hopefully next year, and yeah, see what happens.
And so, to that point of other projects, what are you focusing your creative attention on outside of
Sure.
Carbomb?
So right now, outside of Carbomb, it's the Satecra, which is my electronic music project. So I have a third record coming out for that. More stuff with Ben. We're working on some new material. I have another side project called Thrush, which is sort of like Carbomb, but with the extremes spread out. So, more 4/4. What would you call it? The money riff. So
Yeah.
maybe some more money riff stuff, and also at the same time maybe crazier math stuff. So I really don't know what it's going to be, but it's just leftover stuff from Carbomb that we're not going to use and throw it into that. And then yeah, and whatever else pops up.
And having touched on, the dreaded algorithm and social media, in terms of people like being aware of the different projects that you've got and different releases, do you sort of have a place where you notify about all of that or?
Sure. Yeah, Instagram is great. I mean, you say what you will about the era of social media and that stuff, but I mean, for artists, like if you're on Instagram and you like music, it's really easy. I mean, it'll show you what you like, and it's really easy. I mean, I think it's never an issue to get the word out as to your fans, especially. I think it's maybe a bit of a challenge to get new fans, but that just could be. It's tough. I mean, there's only so many hours in the day, and there's something like 40,000 new songs a day are being put out, which is a day, which is crazy. So there's a lot of competition there. But I mean, I'm pretty comfortable with where we are, and I think I'll be pretty comfortable where we're going to go. And I don't think we're ever going to get too big. I think everything will be manageable. It's more of just being able to write the quality of stuff we like in shorter amounts of time. I think that's the biggest challenge. And I think that's maybe why, if we were writing a record a year, I think we'd be growing faster. But it was just, this type of music, it just takes time.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
thinking about that in terms of what you're working on with Carbomb, is Tiles, Whispers, Dreams going to be a standalone release, or are you thinking that any of these tracks are going to end up being on a future album?
Yeah. So Blind Sides will be on the full length that we're putting out next year, which we are wrapping up hopefully within the next 6 months or so. We've had these songs for a while. We actually put them on the shelf for a while. So once we get back on tour, we'll revisit everything and start tightening things up. And I'm hoping like in February and March, we'll start to put out some singles.
Very cool. And thinking about the release of the EP, I see that you've got some cool vinyl editions of it. What exactly have you got coming out for the EP?
So is there 3 variants of the vinyls? It's a 10-inch, which is interesting. We have the CD, and then we were talking about maybe doing tapes, so we might do that later on. And then a bunch of T-shirts and whatever else we can throw on top,
Yeah, it's funny how cassettes have had a bit of a resurgence.
Yeah. I mean, they don't last. I mean, did you ever own any cassette?
Oh yeah, I'm of
Yeah,
that
if you
age.
listen to them recently, they don't really hold up very well.
Yeah, I don't really have a working cassette player, which is a big issue.
Sure. Yeah, me neither. But I have you don't have like a Walkman, like a little tiny little one?
Not anymore. I used to for a long
Oh,
time.
yeah. You can probably get them for $20, secondhand, and just pop them in there.
Yeah, I'm
But
sure
they're
you're
getting
quite
eaten
right.
up. So like even like you said, you're a drummer, right?
No, I was saying like I play music, but I'm completely kind of novice when it comes to drumming.
Okay. Do you record music at all?
Yeah.
Do you write something? You ever worked on a 4-track before?
No.
Okay, so though that's interesting. It was this big giant box that had all 4 channels, and you throw a cassette in there, and it would record. Instead of left right on 2 sides, it'd be tracks 1, 2, 3, and 4. So we have all these old 4-track tapes with all this stuff, but if you put them in and try to play them now, it's like just all white noise because the tapes get all screwed up. So it's not like the best format to preserve music, but it's definitely cool that it's like sort of a resurgence, like a novelty type of thing.
Yeah, that's interesting.
Yeah.
And thinking about then the tour that's coming up, so you're going to be supporting Imperial Triumphant, as we mentioned. There's going to be, I think, 1 or 2 gigs you're supporting Gojira. I
One.
think And then there's some other like headline shows you're doing. Like, what in total do you actually have lined up in the forthcoming
I
weeks and
couldn't
months?
tell you. I have to look and cheat. Hold on a second. I know we're doing a couple of festivals. So we're doing Brutal Assault. We're doing hold on, I'll tell you in a second.
Yeah, I think Brutal Assault on the 7th of August is maybe that's the first one that I've seen anyway.
Yeah, that'll be cool to play that again. And then we're doing Complexity Fest, which that was one of the first festivals we ever done, and we're psyched to get back to that. And then we're doing another one. Oh, Arctangent, of course, which is always great. Yeah, and then so what? We got about like 3 weeks worth of stuff from August 7th to the 23rd. Yeah, so about 2 weeks, a little over 2 weeks.
And almost every day as well, I see. Is that generally the way that you like to do it when you've got
Yeah, because we can't take off of work that long. We can't, we can't be road dogs. Like Australia would be different because obviously you have to fly, and then we're going to be jet lagged as fucked anyway. So you need to take a day or two to relax between each gig. But yeah, when we're in Europe, it's like we want to squeeze in as much dates as we possibly can.
Yeah, and as we mentioned, things are very close together, so at least you have that. It's a bit more convenient to get from one country to the next.
Yeah, of course.
Well, Greg, thank you so much for your time. It was really cool to talk to you. Fan of your music, and I've always been completely perplexed by how you make it. So it's very cool to get your insights.
Awesome, man. Excellent. Yeah, it was great, man. Nice talking to you.
Pleasure. All the best.
Take care. Yep.